Welcome to Nutrition Basics. My name is Sam Haswell, and I am the Integrative Health Dietitian at VCU Massey Cancer Center. Today, we're going to be talking about heart healthy nutrition because February is not only Valentine's Day, but also American Heart Month. Let's start with talking about some healthy fat sources. Some fats and oils are heart protective, while others can be damaging to the body in large amounts. One of these healthy fats is monounsaturated fat. Monounsaturated fat helps lower your total cholesterol and your LDL cholesterol, which we sometimes call our bad cholesterol. Foods that are high in monounsaturated fat include olive oil, peanut oil, canola oil, avocados, nuts and seeds, and surprisingly, peanut butter. Other healthy fats include polyunsaturated fats. These fats also lower your total cholesterol and your LDL cholesterol and can include things like soybean oil, corn oil, safflower oil, soft tub margarine, walnuts, flax seeds, and sunflower seeds. And within this grouping of polyunsaturated fats, we also have omega-3 fatty acids that are heart protective. These fats improve heart health by reducing the plaques in your arteries and lowering triglycerides, which are unhealthy fats in your blood. Foods that tend to be high in omega-3 fatty acids include fatty fish, like the ones you see listed here, or items like walnuts, flax seeds, and flaxseed oil. We talked about some healthy fats, but it's important to note there are some fat sources that are unhealthy and can damage your heart. Two of these are saturated fat and trans fat, which increase your total cholesterol and in particular, raise your LDL bad cholesterol. The reason we want to make sure that we keep this bad cholesterol low is that it can help clog your arteries and increase your risk for heart attack or stroke. Ideally, we want to make sure that we're limiting saturated fats in particular. Saturated fats include things like butter, stick margarine, ghee, lard, coconut oil, and palm oil, while foods that have naturally containing saturated fat are fatty cuts of meat, bacon, sausage, cured meats, and full-fat dairy. We generally want to avoid something called trans fats. Trans fats are foods that have been turned into, they're basically like altered mechanically to be unsaturated, but they're actually bad for your heart. In particular, trans fats raise your LDL cholesterol and actually decrease your HDL cholesterol, which is good for your heart. Foods that typically have trans fats are going to be shortening and commercial baked goods. One of the ways you can check if something has trans fats is to look at the nutrition label when you're looking at something in a package and see if it says hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oil in its ingredients. If it contains those ingredients, I generally recommend you try to avoid it and choose something else. We also want to make sure that we're careful with our dietary cholesterol. Generally, we recommend that you get 200 milligrams or less per day, but keep in mind that foods that are high in cholesterol tend to be high in saturated fat, so ideally you should be limiting them anyway. And here are some tips for how you can include these healthy oils and protect your heart. One of the things you can do is try to cook or bake with these unsaturated fat sources like olive oil and canola oil. Choose snacks like 1 ounce of nuts, such as walnuts or almonds, which are known to be high in unsaturated fat. Maybe add things like ground flaxseed to yogurt, smoothies, or oatmeal. Or even maybe some flaxseed oil to your smoothies. You can do things like adding avocado slices to sandwiches and salads, which also has lots of fiber. You can choose lean cuts of meats like top round, sirloin steak, or even things like poultry. You can try to include fatty fish like salmon or tuna to get in those omega-3s. And maybe even consider a meatless meal or a meatless day 1 day per week. Plant stanols and sterols can also be helpful for improving your heart health. These are also known as phytosterols, and they are natural substances that are found in plant-based foods. The way this can help your heart is that these phanols and sterols are similar size and shape to dietary cholesterol, but it doesn't have the same negative effects. Basically, these work by competing with cholesterol for absorption in your intestines, so it blocks some of that cholesterol from being absorbed. Over time, this can maybe help lower your LDL cholesterol. Foods that naturally contain these phytosterols are vegetables, fruits, beans, peas, nuts, seeds, vegetable oils, wheat germ, and wheat bran. I know that sounds like a lot of foods, but unfortunately, there isn't a ton of phytosterol naturally occurring in foods, so you often see it added to foods in the grocery store. Some of the foods that it's added to that may be in good amounts is margarine spreads, orange juice, granola bars, cereal, some salad dressings, and yogurt. Usually, if there's been phytosterols added, you'll see it on the label. They'll put it somewhere to make sure you know. It's also important to note that sodium can be damaging to your heart by raising your blood pressure. Ideally, we want to make sure we're trying to eat less sodium and limit sodium-rich food items to help prevent heart disease. Your body needs sodium, but most Americans eat more sodium than the body needs on a regular basis. To put this in perspective, 1 teaspoon of salt has 2,300 milligrams of sodium, and generally you don't need more than 2,000 milligrams sodium per day. One of the ways you can reduce your sodium intake is by checking your food label. Look for foods that are labeled as reduced sodium, low sodium, lightly salted, unsalted, or no salt added. This means that these foods are going to have less sodium than something that doesn't have this label. When checking your packaged foods, you can also look at your nutrition label under the sodium item and try to find things that have 300 to 400 milligrams per serving at meals, or 140 milligrams or less at snacks. Keep in mind that if you eat more than 1 serving, you're going to have to double how much sodium's in there. So be mindful if you're using nutrition labels to track your sodium level. Other ways we can reduce our sodium intake is by avoiding the salt shaker. Instead, try adding flavor to your food with things like lemon juice, lime juice, citrus, olive oil, things like vinegar, or herbs and spices that don't have salt. Some of these herbs and spices are things like basil, oregano, garlic and onion powder or celery powder, paprika, and rosemary and thyme. You can also look for salt-free blends like Miss Dash to flavor your food. Unfortunately, eating out can often be a big way to get sodium. Making food at home is often a little bit easier because you can control your sodium intake yourself. If you are eating out and you're trying to watch your salt intake, consider asking the chef to prepare your food without salt so that you can control how much is added. But keep in mind, if you're putting pinches of salt in your food, it can add up very quickly to hitting that teaspoon amount. That's way too much. Other things to consider is choosing fresh foods at home. Fresh fruits and vegetables are going to be naturally lower in sodium. Frozen fruits and vegetables can also be low in sodium, but you want to make sure you're avoiding ones with added juices or sauces that may have sodium in the contents. Keep in mind that fresh meats and poultry are going to be lower in sodium than processed meats. Processed meats like bacon, sausage, hot dogs, and lunch meats are often going to be high in sodium and may actually go against what you're trying to achieve. Eating more plant-based foods can also help you lower your blood pressure, maintain a healthy body weight, lower your cholesterol, and improve your overall heart health, while also being cancer preventative and helping you with cancer survivorship. Plant-based foods are going to include fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans and legumes, soy, and nuts and seeds. Something to keep in mind, in particular plant-based foods, is that foods that are high in soluble fiber, like plant-based items, can actually help lower your bad cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol. And I provided some examples here. Foods that we know are really, really high insoluble fiber include psyllium fiber, oats and oatmeal, beans, avocados, sweet potatoes, citrus fruit, and Brussels sprouts, as well as some others like barley. For both heart health and cancer prevention and survivorship, we generally recommend you try to use the New American Plate to help you achieve this nutrition goal. The phytochemicals found in plant-based foods can help lower your cancer risk, while the soluble fiber, phytosterols, and low sodium nature of plant-based items can help reduce your risk of heart disease. Try following this method for meal development by including 2/3 or more plant-based foods at meals and 1/3 or less animal foods. Try to avoid processed meats like sausage and bacon, because this will reduce your overall colorectal cancer risk, reduce your sodium intake, and reduce your intake of saturated fat. We also recommend that you try to limit red meats to 12 to 18 ounces or less per week to reduce your risk of colorectal cancer and limit your saturated fat intake. Proteins like poultry without the skin and fish are low in saturated fat and can be part of your healthy diet. One last thing I'd like you to keep in mind is that physical activity is really important for cancer prevention and also for heart health. Physical activity can lower your risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, dementia, Alzheimer's, and several cancers, as you can see here. The American Heart Association recommends at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic physical activity a week, or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic physical activity a week, along with at least 2 days of strength training if you're able to, and trying to spend less time sitting. That means maybe if you're at a desk job, trying to get up every hour or so and move around a little bit can actually be good for your heart and good for your overall wellness. Thank you for joining me for this Nutrition Basics webinar. I hope this helped you learn more about heart-healthy nutrition and cancer prevention. As we talked about before, physical activity can be really helpful in preventing cancer and also in preventing heart disease. If you're looking to join some physical activity, consider joining us for the Ramble on the first and third Saturday of every month. At the Ramble, you'll have the opportunity to interact with other patients and community members and talk with VCU Health staff outside of the clinic. If you're looking for recipes or more nutrition resources, I've attached the QR code here for our Massey Diet and Nutrition blog. So please feel free to check that out. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me with any nutrition questions or topic suggestions. I've listed my email here and I'd be happy to hear from you.